everybody. Welcome to Barely Filtered. Today is kind of a different episode. I have this woman who I personally am a fan of. Her name is Jessica Lanyadoo, and she has a podcast called Ghost of a Podcast. She is a psychic medium, an astrologer, an animal communicator, and basically all the woo-woo things in one. So if you are not on the woo page, this probably is not the episode for you. I'm going to have her read my chart, and I know that seems a little self-indulgent, but I think that there's a lot that you can get out of it just from hearing how astrology charts are read, and what are the different types of information you can gain from learning about your particular chart. There's so many amazing astrologers who can do readings for you, and there's apps like The Pattern, and Chani Astrology is an app that I like also. But you can also check out her podcast at Ghost of a Podcast, and find her on Instagram, and you can learn all about your personal chart that way. So before we go into her, I'm just going to give you a little brief update about my life and what's been going on. I recently started doing something called neurofeedback. This is like a last resort treatment. Not a lot of people have done this, but those who have had great success with it. And you can do it for things like depression, anxiety, ADHD. And basically what it does is it brings electricity to parts of your brain that are underperforming to kind of retrain the neural pathways and retrain the way your brain utilizes its own structure. So let me read you just like a little bit, just so I'm getting this right scientifically. So it says neurofeedback is a type of biofeedback that uses real-time monitoring of brain activity to teach you how to regulate your brain function. It involves placing sensors on the scalp to measure electrical activity in the brain via an EEG, and it provides feedback to individuals. Okay, so all that to say, I went to this lady's house in Santa Monica. She hooked me up. She put these little things on my head, and then she started seeing how my brain was working. The weirdest thing happened where I all of a sudden had a memory, and she said this happens sometimes when certain parts of your brain are underactive, and it's because of trauma. You've had a trauma and it suppresses this part of your brain, and then all of a sudden when she hooks you up, then you're starting to remember things. I remembered, oh my God, when I was 4 and I was in the car with my mom and my brother, and Olivia was in her car seat, and she was throwing a tantrum, and my mom had left us in the car and run across the street to drop something off at her friend's house. So we're sitting in this car. We're not allowed to cross the street. I'm 4 years old. Olivia's 1 and my brother's 5, and she's in her car seat. It's child locked inside the car. The only way to get out is to go through the front seat. She's having a tantrum. She ends up wrapping her neck in the cord of her car seat. It's one of those car seats where kind of the belts go over the shoulders. She was able to pull it, and it wrapped around her neck, and she was being strangled. And she was bleeding through her nose. She popped a blood vessel in her eye, in her neck. She was screaming. So I didn't know what to do. I'm 4 years old. I go to the front of the car, and I'm thinking, I have a daughter who's 4 years old right now. And I'm like, she would not, I don't know if she would know how to do this. So I feel like this is pretty good that I was 4 years old. I go to the front seat. I get out of the car. I'm not allowed to cross the street. I know my sister is choking to death in the car. I'm screaming for my mom across the street. She ends up hearing me, comes out. I remember this so vividly. She opens the car, sees what's happening to Olivia. But it's one of those car seats where, you know, with like a seatbelt, when you pull it and then you let it go and it gets stuck, like you can't pull it anymore. So she couldn't loosen it up for her. So she's screaming. One of the neighbors comes out from a different house with like a pocket knife and cuts her out of the car seat. The ambulance comes, takes my mom and my sister away to the hospital, and then my brother and I would be, by the way, I have no recollection of my brother doing any, I don't know what he was doing. He was probably like reading Pokemon cards or something. And my brother and I go to the neighbor's house and have to spend the night there. And this memory came up, and she's like, yeah, that sounds like it was probably really traumatic, like a first trauma for you. And it didn't occur to me because it's just a story that my family tells all the time about, like, remember that time when Aurora saved Olivia's life? And she said that's usually how it is. It's usually a story that's just in your family that everybody kind of knows and talks about, but you don't realize that it actually was deeply traumatic for you and has actually shaped the way your brain works today. So a lot of ADHD is actually due to trauma, which has made your brain utilize certain parts more than others. I've only had 2 sessions, but after each session, I am so tired, like deeply fatigued, even though you don't feel anything. She hooks you up and she's on the computer and you do like some writing and she's monitoring and it doesn't feel like anything, doesn't feel like much. But afterwards, I'm so tired. And I feel like I've been more on it since doing it. I'm going to have to just keep you posted on how this goes. But a lot of the feedback that I've heard from people who have also done it for things like depression, anxiety, and ADHD, either immediately are blown away with how they are functioning and that their symptoms are gone. And then there's another group of people who don't really know if they feel anything, but all of a sudden the world kind of starts treating them better. It's like everything starts working out a little better for them and things are just happening in a way that they like more in their life. So obviously something has changed, but maybe they're just not aware of it. So I don't know. It's been feeling pretty good so far. I just thought that was really interesting that story came back to my brain. And it's interesting because a lot of times I think we have these stories that we don't realize that maybe they have affected us more than we ever thought that they did. So anyway, just a little interesting tidbit from my past. Now I'm going to bring in our guest, Jessica Lanyadoo. I hope you guys enjoy her as much as I do. Wonderful. How are you? It's so nice to see you face to face.
Yes, lovely to meet you in the fake flesh.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, almost.
So you are a psychic medium, a animal communicator, which is so wild to me, a professional astrologer. How does one become these things, or were you just born them?
That's a great question. I developed an interest in astrology when I was very little, very little. And all of the like adults around me were like, you're going to be a philosopher, you're going to be a therapist, because obviously who would say you're going to be an astrologer?
Yeah.
But I was raised in Montreal, Quebec. And when I was like the school system's different, I won't bore you with the details, but like I was post high school, but it wasn't really university. I went to this alternative college and there was an introduction to astrology class one semester, and then the next semester, an intermediate class. And it was really in depth and really, it just, in the first class, I was like, this right here, this is what I'm going to do. And so I took those 2 classes and I packed up a little backpack full of men's slacks, because I thought I was like a butch back then, and men's slacks and little, white tank tops and astrology books. And I got on a plane one way to San Francisco in 1994. So I moved in 94 to San Francisco to become an astrologer. And then I dedicated, it's been my whole life, but in particular my 20s, to studying and practicing and studying and practicing and studying and practicing. And I didn't believe in psychics and I didn't believe in animal communication or any of that stuff. Of course, I wanted it to be true, but I didn't believe in it at all. And then by my early 30s, the psychic stuff, the mediumship, and the animal communication started really just being undeniable. And it was like a whole entire personal crisis. And you have to keep in mind, in my early 30s, the internet was a thing, but it was like early MySpace days. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how young you are, but
well, you look very good for, I guess you're like 200 years old or something, right?
Yeah, I'm 50. I'll be 50 in a couple months, but I'm pretending to be 50 now. But thank you. Very kind. Very kind. So it was like a radically different world. Nobody cared about astrology. Astrology wasn't an industry. Astrologers weren't, like, it wasn't a job. So I was in this very unique position. And by 1999, I went full time. So that's actually relevant. So I went full time as an astrologer, and then the psychic stuff started to come up. And I just was so lucky because I already had a private practice that was full time as an astrologer. So I could kind of test the waters of these psychic skills, and everything was evidential. Either my clients, who were strangers, We're like, yes, that's exactly what my bedroom looks like. Or yes, that's what my dead father used to say or whatever. Or they'd say, no, that is not accurate. Right. So I had
Yeah.
like, it was like a unique, lucky thing that I could just have evidence of whether or not what I was doing was accurate and real with the psychic stuff, which is hard. Astrology, it's like a lot of people don't fully understand this, but it's, it's a lot of math and it's like a very layered tool. So I could learn it and it was really practical. Whereas the psychic stuff is more like, listening to your headphones and hoping you hear something. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Do you feel
So
like you have to do something in your personal life to keep those tools sharp?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
like
I
your
mean,
psychic stuff?
absolutely. I mean, listen, for me, it's less about keeping it sharp. It's more about turning down the volume. But it's not like, think of it this way. You could be somebody who naturally develops muscle tone easy, right? You just like, you exercise a little bit and you see a little ripple in that arm. You know what I mean? Like you're somebody who just like, you're naturally athletic, but you can still be a couch potato. If you don't actually like use your body and do athletic things, then over time it kind of goes away. And it just because you can develop muscle doesn't mean you organically do. It's just like anything else. It's a muscle that needs to be worked and it needs to be refined because anyone with hypermobility will tell you they go to a yoga class and everyone around them is like, oh my God, you're so flexible. You can do all the things. And then 5 years later, they have all these damn injuries. Like
Mhm.
it's not just about being flexible or being strong. It's about working with your nature and honing your what's healthy for you, what you can sustain. So that takes a lot of work, a lot of labor and effort. Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
wow, 100%. I know people are probably, well, I know that they're thinking this because they DM me these things all the time of like, oh, well, astrology is not real. And these are people
Hmm.
who really are like, oh, well, I'm a Virgo and I don't feel like a Virgo. So the astrology is not real.
Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
and I know that it's so much more in depth and complicated than that. And that it's not a religion. Do you think it's something you have to believe in order for it to
Yeah.
be
I
real?
don't believe in it. I don't believe in astrology at all. Like 0% do I believe in astrology. It's not a belief system. Some people will approach it like a belief system because they're habitual. They're like anything spiritual has to be a belief system. For me, astrology is a tool and it's much like ibuprofen. I get cramps once a month, girl, once a month. And I
Same.
take the damn ibuprofen. And guess what? It doesn't always work. And sometimes it works right away. And sometimes it takes a little time. And sometimes it doesn't really work. And I'm like, give me the rescue remedy. Give me the CBD. Do I then not believe in ibuprofen? No. I continue to not believe in it, whether it works or it doesn't work, because it's just a tool. But I think the thing about like people being like, I'm not a Virgo, like, yeah, I'm a Virgo, but like it doesn't make sense for me. That's not astrology. I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but there's this little thing called capitalism. And what it does is it takes like little parts of things and tries to market them as a whole thing. And we do this with fitness, we do this with wellness, we do this with so many things, right? And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people do not resonate with their sun sign for very great reasons. I'm a Capricorn. I'm not just a Capricorn. I've got sun, moon, and rising all in Capricorn. And Capricorn is supposed to be like the big capitalist of the zodiac. I'm a card carrying anti capitalist. I am not motivated by money.
This is true.
It is true. You've listened to my podcast, so
Yeah.
you know I have very strong anti capitalist values, and I have since I was in my teens. And what I will say about that is that's because all my Capricorn's in the 12th house. So there's an astrological context for it, but you would have to consult with an actual skilled astrologer, which brings me to the next thing that your listeners may kind of run into is listen, if I'm going to tell you I'm a therapist, I have to go to school for 7 million years and I can still be a bad therapist, right? I mean, we've all gone to a bad therapist. Um, but to be an astrologer, I could literally read a couple articles, copy and paste somebody else's content and be like, I'm an astrologer. And there's no way of vetting it or like figuring out the source. And so sometimes people run into these accounts on social media that are just garbagey. You know what I mean? They're like cotton candy, num, num, num. But it's not good for you and it's not substantive or anything like that. And then what? And then they're like, well, food's not real. No, it's just cotton candy. You know what I mean? But it's hard to get good advice, good astrology online, because most of the people online who are like creating tons and tons of content are younger, which means they simply don't have as much experience, expertise, maybe training. And so we don't see as much substantive stuff online. And then there's a lot of people who have a lot of substance, but maybe don't really know how to work a TikTok or whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, yeah. But also, one last thing I would say to that is you don't have to like astrology. Like, not everything's for everyone. I don't like religion. That's cool. You can like religion. I really love the color pink, but I don't like wearing it because it doesn't look good on me. Like, we can have nuanced, complicated relationships to things. And I think people get really weird about astrology. But like, as an astrologer, if somebody's like, I don't like astrology, I say, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, do your thing.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I feel like more and more I'm learning how much I don't know about things. And so remaining open seems to be the best way to navigate anything.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's like a mark of age, right? It's like in your 20s, you go into the world and you're like, I discovered feminism. I discovered that the world is not fair. And it's like everything feels so certain. And the older you get, the less certainty you have. I've been a professional astrologer for 30 years, and I feel more aware of what I don't know now than I did 10 years ago, for sure. Yeah. And it's just, I think that's just part of aging well, I would say. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that my listeners know me, so we can kind of put your skills to the test and be like, okay, well, let's see. Because so my show is a lot about my life. And so I went through a divorce, and I talk about that, and I talk about getting back into the dating game, which has been it's been a lot of content, I'll put it that way, for my show. But so I feel like they know me, and I say often like my mess is my message. And so let's go into that a little bit, mostly for my own, just for my own curiosity.
Let's do you. Let's do you. So I just want to confirm and do you want me to share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at, or just tell you what I'm seeing? So, okay. So listen.
Are you laughing at my chart right now?
No, never. In a million years, no. But listen, when a person has, like, you've got 3 planets in Aries, you're in Aries, you've got your Mercury and your Venus sitting right on top of your sun in the 4th house. You're such an Aries. Like, you're an Aries. You're like, your impulses run hot. The things you like, the things you don't like, they're very, they come up strong in you, right? Mm-hmm. But you've got that Pisces moon. And I find when people have the Pisces moon, like any kind of like Pisces Aries combo, it's exhausting for you.
Oh yeah, I'm tired.
It's exhausting because you're actually really sensy, and all that Aries is like, I'll deal with the sensitivities later. And your Pisces moon is like, no, protect me. So that's why I chuckled when I first looked at your chart, because the truth of the matter is you are really comfortable sharing yourself, and you are really comfortable putting yourself out there in all these ways. And also, you're actually really private.
Yes. I would say that.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Because we're on a podcast about your life.
Nobody would think that I am. But I think I keep the emotional stuff more private. Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, that is something I get a lot with people being like, wow, how do you just move through these experiences unscathed? It's like, no, I'm scathed. Super damn scathed. You are so incredibly sensitive, and your emotions, when you're not doing something about your emotions, they're so tender. You've got this tiny little Aries stellium, you've got a Sagittarius rising, which can make you kind of like, let's get in there and get it done. Let's just have fun. Let's see what happens. But then there's the rest of your birth chart. And the rest of your birth chart says that you're not casual at all. Everything you feel is like on a scale from a 1 to 10. I mean, it starts at a 6 for you. Like, you feel things. Does that make sense to you? Yes. And so it's confusing because your actions are consistently like, let's just go. Let's just go. But your feelings are like, like, it's sometimes really hard for your little heart to catch up with the rest of you who's got like a plan, but your heart's just like, I need it to be slow. I need it to be tender. I need it to be like self-protective. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. I think definitely it takes my emotions a bit to catch up with what's actually going on in my life. Like the situations that I come up with, it's almost like a delayed mourning of things like my divorce, or not even mourning, but a delayed emotional processing.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Pisces moon is really sensitive and it can be a little escapist. And so you can catch yourself retrospectively. Like you can look and be like, oh, I was doing this thing for the last month. And it was really just to like distract myself from what I'm actually feeling. And that is something for you to really pay attention to, especially now, because you're currently going through a Saturn conjunction to your moon. Saturn is squaring your Mars. And so this is like a hyper consequential time for how you're choosing to live. And in particular, you date men?
I do.
Yeah. And in particular, in your relationships with men and in how you process and hold and care for your emotions. And this is related to, in some ways, impulsivity and like how you do or don't pace yourself around your desires versus your needs. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. That does make sense. And how long has this been going on for? Because I have been dating like back to back to back, and
Sure you have.
it hasn't been, well, it's not, I don't feel like anything has been, I don't feel traumatized. I feel like I've been having fun, but I'm not feeling too hopeful that the love of my life is going to be coming out of this the way I've been doing it.
So, to which I would say, if you met the love of your life right now, it would be such a shame because
Okay.
you're evolving and you're changing. And the person you're growing into might not vibe exactly with the love of your life. Like, I think, at the risk of sounding cheesy, you're in this moment where you're needing to figure out how to fall in love with yourself over a man or over a bestie. And I don't know that you've developed that skill set as an adult. So I don't know how long you were married or how long you've ever been single, but it looks like you're very good at staying busy and have a harder time sitting alone with yourself. And if I was like queen of the world, which thank God I'm not, but were I queen of the world, I would encourage you to date yourself. You know, you want to hook up, you want to hang out, whatever. But like, I would encourage you to date yourself so that when a truly fantastic human male comes around, you feel like you like took your single time and you really like figured some things out about yourself so that your next relationship isn't like some sort of a replay of that last relationship.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, which is hard to do. You know what I mean? Like it's not like get it girl kind of advice, but it is you're going through Saturn transits, and Saturn transits are meant to teach you kind of heavy lessons. And like to your question, how long this has been going on, bear with me. I just have to look backwards. It started at the start of the year pretty much. Like March 24.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Did you start dating anybody in particular around that time?
Yes. For those of you who have been longtime listeners, that was when I was dating the guy who I met on a dating app. He ended up having a family that he was hiding from me.
Oh my God.
I ended up finding out in the most ridiculous way. He like lied about his child being in the hospital, and then I ended up finding he was an actual psychopath.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, thank you. Yeah, I'm fine. It can be the Wild West out there. And that's what started this. Yeah.
That's insane. Well, you see, part of what the lesson is for you is to watch the impulses. You have a Moon Mars conjunction. And so like you feel it, you want to act on it. You feel it, you want to do something about it. And that's not bad or good. But with men, sometimes it can get you jumping in before you have enough information. And then you can be kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that was an extreme example, but sometimes when we go through these kinds of transits, we get extreme examples to catch the attention. Mm-hmm. And so have you been dating anyone in particular since then, or just like dating around?
There's been a few short stints, and it is true that they're fast and furious and then they die just as fast as it started.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for whatever it's worth, the reason why that's happening is so that you learn something about yourself and don't get so wrapped up in him. So how long were you with your husband? Because you're young to have been married already.
Yeah, well, we met each other. I was 25. We were together for a total of like 9 years, but married for 3.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a really long time.
I wasn't single for, I guess this is the longest time I've been single, really.
Mm-hmm.
Just these last
I mean,
couple.
single and dating is different than single. Single.
Yeah, that's true. I've
Single.
never been single.
You've never
I
been
guess.
single. And I would, as your astrologer for the day, I would recommend that you take this time to be single because I
Sounds so
agree.
boring, though. I'm not going to be lonely.
That's a great question. That's a really great question. And that's yours alone to answer because
Yeah.
the tricky thing about life is how damn long it is. It's long. You know what I mean? Because you're what, 30? What? 5.
Yeah.
So it feels pretty long already, right?
Yeah.
But you've only been an adult for maximum 15 years. Like if you count a 20-year-old as an adult, which personally me, I don't, but you know, it's only 15 years deep. You got so many more years. And so if you don't take that chance to be alone with yourself when you're young and happen to be single, then the drive to do it will come later.
Oh, and you don't want that drive to happen when you're in a relationship.
That's what I'm trying to get at, my dear.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's like, who are you when you're left with boredom? Like what comes up when you're bored? That's important for you to know if you want to stay married to someone, because there's no man alive who's not boring. I mean, there's no woman alive who's not boring. People are boring. You know what I mean? Relationships get boring. And if you don't have the skills to deal with boredom, then you have problems. And the problems feel like they're a problem in a relationship when maybe they are. And maybe they're just your problem that always comes up in a relationship. Like, how do you know unless you know? Do you know what does that make sense?
It really does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're going through Saturn transits, usually dating is hard. And so, a testament to like girls got it that you're actively dating, but it's like the best time to choose to be single because you're right. It's not like all the fruit has a real big pit in it. You know what I mean? It's not that sweet.
Yeah. Saturn transits are so annoying. Lately I've just been really not loving Saturn in general. I just feel like there's so many rules. There's so many, it just feels so confining. Like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
When is it going away?
Okay. That's a great question. I didn't check. Let me check now. Hold, please, sir. Okay. Hold on. 2020 something. Hold on. So let's see. It's totally done at 17 degrees. And for the people who care, this is what astrology is. It is a math. It's math. Okay. So let's see. Will it be over? It'll be over soon. It'll be over in February. Late February 2025. So soon.
So when would you say for someone is the best time to be dating? What is there any kind of a conjunction that's going on in your chart that people can look for?
So it depends on what you're dating for. Some people only date with the goal of getting a marriage partner, or only date for the goal of finding somebody to like financially take care of them or emotionally take care of them. Some people date because they just want to have fun and want to have sex. There's a lot of reasons to date. So I should preface it with that because I've spent many years of my life wanting to date, not to be in a relationship, just because dating is fun and weird and whatever.
Yeah.
So to get into a committed relationship, let me first start with this. I can tell you when not to date. Saturn transits. Sometimes during a Saturn transit, you like meet the person you're fated to be with, but generally it's more of what you're experiencing. It's just hard. So I would recommend, if I was again, queen of the world, that you stop dating until right after the new year.
Okay.
After Valentine's Day.
I guess we're taking a break around here, guys.
Ooh,
I don't know.
let's
What are
see
we going to
what
talk about?
happens.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll just try to date myself.
Try to date yourself.
People know how that goes.
And also like deepen your friendships and develop more fun things that you like to do that don't require a man. Which is really just about enriching yourself. That's part of dating yourself, right? But okay, in terms of good relationship transits, like anything Jupiter to Venus or Jupiter to Mars is going to be good for like meeting people and having chemistry. When you go through like a Saturn trine to the moon or a Saturn trine to Venus, you can sometimes meet someone who's really compatible with you. Meeting somebody who's like helps you break your patterns, that's a Uranus transit. Neptune's always bad for dating.
Okay.
Yeah. So that said, you have no Neptune transits on the imminent horizon, which is wonderful news I'm giving you.
Yeah.
And let's see, Uranus is going to Taurus, Gemini. Nothing is imminent, which is great. You just have these 2 Saturn transits happening.
Oh, there's 2 Saturn transits.
Saturn conjunct the moon and Saturn square Mars.
Oh, that's feels hard.
And also it's actually 3 and Saturn square your ascendant. So all 3 of these things are happening at once, but that's normal for you because so astrology is like I said, it's a lot of math and it works on basic geometry. So all of the mutable signs, which are Sagittarius, Gemini, Pisces, and Virgo, they're all on the same axis. I mean, this is going to bore a lot of people. They're all on the same axis. So when you have a planet like right now, Saturn, in a mutable sign like Pisces, whenever it hits like around between, I would say 13 and 17 degrees of a mutable sign, it kicks off your ascendant, moon, and Mars. So you tend to go through really clustered times where things are fucking fabulous or really like you're learning a lot, whether it's hard, bad, or just hard, like, I'm working on this. It's like, that's just how your chart is written. And to me, like for people who are like, oh, Virgo doesn't match me. I don't ever pay attention to that because astrology is really good for stuff like this. Understanding like, yeah, you go through periods of time that are really amazing or really challenging. And it tends to like last a little chunk of time. And not everyone experiences that. You experience that because of the way your chart is written, the math of it all.
Not everybody has. Okay. But everybody has transits that last for a good chunk of time. Like a year, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
But for you, like you rarely are going through one transit at a time. You're often going through multiple transits at a time. That's your normal. Which, your friends might be like, you're extra. You know what I mean? Like you got all the things all the time. And sometimes they're jealous and sometimes they're not. Like life is like that, right? But like no one's ever accused you of being like a boring person with nothing going on.
Actually, no. That's the one thing I maybe have never been accused
Correct.
of.
Correct. So, and that's just, it's in your chart. It's in your chart. It's like, as they say, it is written.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I know we have eclipse season coming up, and for our listeners, is that something that is going to be affecting everybody or certain people more than others?
Eclipses are always a really big deal. They come in pairs. We will have a lunar eclipse, which is basically a full moon, but heavily intensified. And then a solar eclipse, which is a new moon, but heavily intensified. Full moons, like every month we have a full moon, right? And it affects us for about a month. But eclipses affects us for about 6 months.
Oh.
Yeah. So like it's really consequential. And eclipses are meant to like trigger big emotional evolution, big emotional growth. And so some people for sure experience each individual eclipse more personally and intensely than other people. And that's again based on the math of your birth chart. So it's not really, when people are like, you read articles and they're like, this is what it means for your sign. It's kind of like the WebMD of going to the doctor. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not really personalized to you, but it's like in the family of accurate, even though it's not specific. So when eclipses occur, generally things become both more clear and less clear at the same time. It's like you start really getting things. They start to show up and clarify themselves to you. They start to make more sense emotionally. But as that happens, you start to become aware of what you don't get, of what you're not sure about.
Right.
And you're supposed to, technically speaking, be in the emotions of it instead of getting intellectual about it or like making any major moves. Making major moves is ill-advised during eclipse season because it's like an earthquake. I mean, I'm in California, so I call everything an earthquake, but it's like an earthquake where you can't really predict what's going to happen. You just know you're going to get rattled.
Okay.
Right? And so I think for you, it has a lot to do with boundaries. For you, I think it has to do with your own ability to sit with your feelings. Because it looks like you have a tendency to really like when emotions start to get too much, whatever that means in the moment, you do something to distract. You like take an action, you do a thing, and it keeps life interesting. But it also means that those same emotions that you're avoiding or escaping are just kind of waiting for you. And the older you get, the more challenging that backlog gets. So you're really young still. It's like, you're starting to feel it, but you're not like getting bogged by it at 35. The amount of adult years you have in front of you, oh my God, so many more. Like 40 something, 50 something.
That's
maybe
exciting.
60 something. Exciting / also, I like to say to everyone in their 30s, motivating to do the work now. Because if you've ever met somebody who's over the age of 50 or even over the age of 40, you see people get stuck. I don't know if you have a lot of older people in your life, but
yeah,
people can get really stuck. And the way we get stuck is by really doubling down in our 30s and 40s on who we are and how we are, instead of being willing to change and willing to like be uncomfortable. And as an astrologer, I am really of the mind that if more people were willing to be uncomfortable, the world would be a radically different place. Like, I think we underestimate how much weird shit we do in our lives because we don't want to be uncomfortable.
So just like feeling the discomfort, sitting with it, and ultimately that's going to make it dissipate.
That's interesting. Okay, good question. So basically what I'm suggesting is that what most people do is they're like, got a headache. I'll go get a tattoo. And then now you're no longer thinking about your headache because you have a tattoo and those are needles in your arm. And now you've got to nurse the pain and make sure that afterwards that it doesn't get infected and all that kind of stuff. You show people the tattoo you got. So now you have a whole big distraction. But whatever was going on that gave you the headache is still there. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm suggesting is, instead of going and get that tattoo, sitting with the headache, asking yourself, like, what do I need? Like, is something wrong? Am I chronically dehydrated? Is there like something in my head? Like, am I having a neurological issue? Like, what is it? Like, exploring possibilities so you can figure out the best way to take care of yourself. But what most of us do when we feel really sad or bad is, it's pretty much to your question, we want to fix it. How can I stop feeling sad or bad? And when you go in with that attitude, which is a perfectly reasonable adult thing to want to do, but when we go in with that attitude, habitually, what I think happens is that we're not curious. So if you want to fix a problem before you understand the problem, then what you're doing is masking the problem. You're shutting it up. You know what I mean? So think of it this way. I guess I'm a metaphor queen. A baby is crying, right? A baby is crying. Now, you can just close the door and turn off the baby cam. Not baby cam. What do they call those things?
Monitor.
Monitor. Obviously, I have no babies.
Yeah.
The monitor. You can just be like, babies cry. Whatever. Babies cry. It's too much crying. Turn off the monitor. We do that to ourselves most of the time. You do that to yourself most of the time. So do I. It's a human thing, unless we really try not to. But when you think about it that way, what if the baby's got a problem? What if it's lying on its side in a weird way? What if it's sick? What if it's hungry? What if it's pooped itself? I don't know what babies do. but I do know that we practice being curious. Why is the baby crying? What does the baby need? But that doesn't mean the baby stops crying, right?
Yeah.
We just adjust, adapt to the child's needs, hopefully to make it stop crying, but we understand that babies cry. And what I'm suggesting is that by practicing being present with your emotions, it's like you're honoring your own, at the risk of sounding cheesy, your own inner child. And you're listening to her and you're being curious about her. And you're like, not just being like, oh, well, she's a whiner. Shut her up, distract her. Instead, you're like, oh, what is it that I actually am sad about? Like, am I just like running myself? Am I just tired? Am I actually sad because I had a weird thing with my friend a week ago and I haven't done anything about it and it's just weighing on me? Like, what am I actually sad about? Not so you can fix it, but so you can understand yourself. And if that's the motivation to actually have more self-understanding, then what to do to fix it, it's right there. It's right there. Does that make sense? Like, when you understand why the baby's crying, you don't have to figure out what to do. You're like, oh, the baby shit themselves. I know, I'll change the diaper. But first we have to identify the problem. And what most adults do is we don't identify the problem. We just try to fix it, which is like submerging symptoms,
Yes,
right?
I 100%.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that, and I think this is also a Pisces moon thing, but um, as I've gotten older, I realized that the things that I thought maybe were addictions or overindulgence were really just escapist behavior or a kind of a striving to feel less or feel more or feel different.
Yes.
And now even I catch myself because I'm learning more about myself as, as I get older. Like in the afternoon when I'm tired, my first reaction is to have a coffee and not just rest. We just want
Right.
to change it.
Totally. And it's like a technically high functioning thing to do, right? Like stay in the game, stay loud, stay engaged, all those things. Have a coffee, have a Red Bull, whatever. But if your body is telling you at 3 p.m. every day, I need a siesta, then learning how to organize your life around a fucking siesta, Olay. You know what I mean? Like it is good. It is the
Totally.
right thing to do. And I
Yeah.
think this is again where it's easier to do that in your 30s than it is in your 40s. And it's easier to do that in your 40s than it is in your 50s. And it gets harder every decade after that. And
Oh.
the 30s are kind of a unique thing because you're still really young, but you're also an adult. Like you're for sure 100% an adult. You know what I mean? Whereas in your 20s, it's like, you know, a lot of our 20s we reference our teen years as part of our like experiences, which
Yeah.
at 35 I'm guessing you don't do anymore.
Right. There's a lot of things that I just I can't excuse.
Exactly, in yourself and other people. And
Yeah.
the 20s are when you like walk into like walls and be like, oh my God, that hurt. I can't believe walking into a wall hurt. I'll try running at it. You know what I mean? And like your 30s, you're like, no, 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 I've already run into walls. I actually know that hurts. I'm going to avoid walking into walls now. And as it should be. But the work as we age becomes more like you have to have the self awareness and not just the behavioral awareness. And that shit's hard.
Yeah.
And it's especially hard when it comes to dating and love. Like it's especially hard when it comes to dating and love. And you get bored of people, is what it looks like.
I do. And I also feel like I get angry with myself after the fact because I knew very early on and I didn't act on it because I wanted to. I don't know. I think lately I've been balancing trying to give somebody the benefit of the doubt and enough time and not judging a book by its cover or judging too quickly. But then ultimately, I always end up kind of having all my answers in the beginning anyway.
Yep. Yep. I'm a believer in threes of being
Okay.
like, okay, if this person is like, my instinct says we don't have chemistry, but he seems really nice. We have great conversation. He's respectful. Give him 2 more shots. That's my attitude. Threes are great because then it's like a structure and you're like, okay, I can practice giving this person a chance, practice letting it kind of, some people are growers and not showers, if you know what I mean, girl.
Yeah.
And like, we want to leave room for that.
Yeah.
And also, 4 times, no, that's 1 time too many. You know what I mean? Like 4 months is 1 month too many when you knew at month 1, but you were just being open. And that is that's my kind of go-to is like
Yeah.
threes, give them 3 shots, give yourself 3 shots. And I think that said though, the way that your chart is written, chemistry is a really big deal to you. And there's like the emotional chemistry and then there's the physical chemistry. And they're both, you tend to know very quickly whether or not that exists. And that is really, really important. But what's also important is compatibility. And compatibility, that's where you might encounter a grower, not a shower.
Right.
Like somebody who's like truly compatible with you because you need somebody who you can have like a private life with and also who like wants to go out and be an activity partner and like do shit with you. You need somebody who can kind of do both things.
Right. Totally.
And it's harder to know that more personal thing right away.
Yes. Definitely. Yeah. Maybe 3 months I need to give people 3 months to realize whether or not we're compatible. That's kind of been proving itself.
So that said, looking at your birth chart, if I'm going to be totally frank, and and then also your listeners know whether or not this makes sense, but I think you have a lot of ideas about what you want from a partner. I also think you have no idea what you want from a partner.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And it's
Definitely.
because of where you're at, because you really, really know who you are and what you're about, and you know yourself. And also, you don't. You're in this weird fucking place where it's like they're both true. Like the things that you thought you wanted from a marriage, I think your last marriage showed you don't completely want from a marriage.
Definitely.
And that said, you haven't taken the space to be with yourself, to let all that settle. And the thing about astrology that's fucking fascinating, one of the many things about astrology that's fascinating is astrology's, we're tracking time, right? But we're also tracking space. I mean that like literally, like space, time, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about what happens to so many of us is we're so focused on not wasting time that we don't create space within time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're kind of doing right now is you're like, I don't want to be single for fucking ever. So let's giddy up and go. But you're not taking the space that you have in the time that you have.
Yeah. Because I think we're kind of programmed to think that then we're wasting time.
Correct. And the only way to waste time is to not learn. Honestly, it's what I believe. Do you want to have human babies?
I have 2 kids already.
Oh, you have kids?
Yeah. But I would like to have another.
Really?
I think.
Really? Tell me why.
I know you're like, but they're horrible. No, honestly, because I would like to have that experience again and feel like I'm a different person now and have it with somebody that's not my ex-husband. I just feel like I've learned so much. And I think I was young when I was 28 when I had my first. And I just would love to have that experience again. I also love being a mother. I love babies. And I would love to do it when I'm just in a different place in my life. But
when
it
you're
is
more
so
mature. Yeah.
when I've learned so much since I had my first child. But then sometimes I'm like, wow, that I gave so much of, I still am. Of course, it's a never ending job. You give so much of yourself. And sometimes I'm like, maybe it's nice that I just, I checked those boxes and I don't have to go back to that.
That's why I had a little bit of surprise, not because I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have kids. You've got 3 planets in the 4th house. Yeah. Parenting makes a lot of sense for you. It's just the first, 3 years, 4 years, you're just like on call 24/7 in a different ways when they're a bit older.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, oh, you shouldn't, but I'm like, oh, but you've done that. You've done that already. But let me just say this. I am of the mind. It sounds like you want kids, and also you're aware that maybe it's not to have more kids isn't the best thing for you. Like you're aware that there's like a yes, but maybe not.
Yes, that's like everything in my life. It's so funny because I had a guy on last week who was like, you're not manifesting the thing because you're confusing the universe with what you're putting on. Like, do you want it or do you not?
100%. I am saying the exact same thing to you in different words throughout this conversation, is that you haven't given yourself the space to settle in to yourself. And therefore, you're putting things into the universe. If you want to talk in manifestation terms, you're putting things into the universe and they're not aligned. And when they're not aligned, they don't yield results.
Right.
And the reason why you haven't manifested a partner is because you don't actually want a partner. Bold words. I'm going to stand by them. I'm going to stand by them. I think you want to know that you're going to have a partner.
Yes, I do. I would love for him to just be like, "Okay, hon, I'll see you in
3 years. 3 years. Like in 3 years, I'll see you." And if you had perfect confidence in it, you would be relieved and you would be a different person. And what I'm encouraging you to do.
Aren't you a psychic? Just
I am. I'm going to encourage you to be that person now. Have faith. Okay. One thing that you've never had a problem with is wrangling a fucking man in your life.
That's true.
It's not your problem. And this is the thing that you're at the age where you can finally trust that. You've never had a desert of opportunity with men. Never. No. Age changes things. You know what I mean? And I mean that because men are terrible and not because that's actually true. So I get why you would be like, a little TikTok.
Yeah.
But I really just think any man who's not going to date you because you're a fucking grown up is going to leave you because you're a grown-up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, it is. So we fucking need those guys. What you need is you. What you need is you. So this is where, like, whether we're talking about manifestation, astrology, whatever it is, when we honor the truth, well, that's the same thing as getting aligned, right? When you do that, then things do come to you. Now, not immediately and not without struggle or pain completely. And that's what throws people off. But I really think that if you have another kid, you have another kid. Like, that would be really cool. And also, if you like have a rich life and you already have 2 kids and you fall in love with somebody and it just doesn't happen for whatever reason, I don't see you being like, oh, my life is
Yeah.
bad. I don't see that for you at all.
Yeah. I'm kind of okay. I would be okay with either, I think.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that something that's really hard for people who want to procreate is the like time limit on dating that it imposes.
Totally.
But if you take that off, if you just have faith that you're going to be partnered and that you're going to have a happy family and you're going to continue to work to make those things happen, but also that you just believe, you just have faith, you want to like be aligned with that, then it's going to come for you. I mean, you've already had it. Even though you're divorced, it looks like you had a lot of the things that you wanted. Whether or not you wanted the right things is a different conversation. But you had a lot of the things you wanted in the ex, did you not?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You just wanted some of the wrong things, it turns out.
Yeah. I didn't want to be in a relationship and I chose somebody who didn't want to be in a relationship.
Bingo.
So it's kind of
So that's the exact thing that I was like trying to be really delicate and vague about early in the conversation, where it's like, you want to make sure you don't end up in the same relationship, basically.
Yeah.
And what you're doing now is going to get you different coat, different hat, same fucking guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to change in order to get a different result.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. It's hard
I think
work.
that's going to be really helpful for people to listen, because it's, whether it's dating or you know, your career that you're talking about or whatever, I feel like it's all the same physics that we're talking about here.
Yes, it is. And also, like, we ask children, right? We ask children to go to school and to have faith that they'll learn something by the end of the day. Do children learn something at school every day? Absolutely not. No. But we know that, you know, they keep on going to school, they'll learn something for sure. But as we become adults and we like parent our own selves, we lose track of that. We stop having faith in our ability to learn from our experiences. And we start looking for immediate evidence all the time. But some things are cumulative. And I think that, like, something that I see in your chart, and I think will, again, really resonate with a lot of your listeners, is that drive to have immediate validation, to have results show up right away, is sometimes distracting from having faith in your own ability to cumulatively grow, to develop something over time and then be different. And then when you're different, attract different circumstances to match. You know what I'm saying? These are the things that happen when you're living an alignment, when you're living in alignment with your truth and you're not too fixated on making things happen. In particular, kind of like this thing we're talking about with men, where you're like, I don't really want to be in a relationship, but I want to know that one day I'll be in a relationship, so I'm dating now. And that's chaotic, and it gets chaotic results.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, it does. Which is, really, you know, fun to talk about on a podcast.
It is. Yeah, it's really good content for a podcast.
It is.
I want to just briefly, and I know this is not like a brief topic, but I know people want to know, how do we find out what our life's purpose is by looking at our chart? And I don't mean like, this person's meant to be a firefighter. Is there a way that you can kind of get a vague idea of what direction you should be taking your life if you're feeling stuck and you want to use astrology as a tool?
I am of the mind that that's not a good point of inquiry. I know it's a really common one, though.
Okay.
So there's something called the North Node. And I think it is commonly misunderstood as one's life purpose. What it really is an evolutionary hotspot in your birth chart, and it points to where your soul is evolving. And your North Node, for instance, is in Pisces, and it's in the second house. And so what it speaks to is, in this lifetime, your soul is here to learn how to identify your values and live in a way that is nuanced in the way that it reflects that. And that's not what you're focused on, right?
Right.
Like, that's not what you're focused on.
Yeah.
I could like refer you to books to read about it, and we could talk about it for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I am of the mind that the reason why, like, this whole thing about like a life's purpose, is a bad point of inquiry is because, again, you're focusing on a result, a thing, right? Like, this is what I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be, like you said, a firefighter, a mom. I'm supposed to learn how to grow out my hair, whatever the fuck it is. Like, we get into this mode where we're like, this is what I'm supposed to be. And inherent to that is I'm not being what I'm supposed to be. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And it becomes this like way that we track our own progress when, and I know this sounds overly simple, but the only reason why people don't like to hear it is because how hard it is. It's simple, but it's hard.
Right.
It's this. It's be honest. Act in ways that are in alignment with what's authentic. And being honest might be like, I have a job that I hate and it pays the bills. I don't like my coworkers and I can't be a dick to them. So I'm going to be fake. But if I'm being in alignment with myself, I need the money. This is my best choice at this time. Like, it doesn't mean not making compromises. It doesn't mean not having complicated life situations. It means not abandoning yourself or lying to yourself, making conscious choices, and most people don't want to do that. It's hard. It's exceptionally hard to do, especially like we talk about like this dating stuff. I don't have a magic wand. I can't promise you that you'll meet a man in 3 years when will be the ideal time for you so that you could just like be with yourself now. No one can promise that. Even if you saw 5 psychics and we all said the exact same thing, it might boost your confidence, but you can't know until you have retrospect.
Right.
And this is where we can't do things for evidence. We have to do things because they're in alignment. If it's true for you that you're actually not ready for anything much, then unless a fantastic guy crosses your algorithm or like you meet a fantastic guy IRL, like fuck it. You know what I mean? Like date you. And that's easier said than done, right? Like, because if you to really sit with yourself, there's a million feelings and insecurities and worries and stuff like that come up that going on dates and being distracted by guys could remedy.
Yeah, I think just the act of feeling like you're doing something about something helps you feel like you're being productive when in fact maybe the most productive thing is actually to do nothing.
Correct. Yeah. Sometimes the quickest way there is to just jump in a taxi. Sometimes the quickest way there is to not like get in your car and drive and then park and then get there. You know what I mean? Like you have more control that way, but sometimes you just need to let go of control. Let the universe take you. And I know I said taxi and it was old school, but I just feel like fuck Uber. It's such a complicated company. You know what I mean?
It really is. And Lyft is so much cheaper.
Yeah. Yes. Also, I'm pro union. So let's go taxi. But okay, that was a distraction. But you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
So I think astrology is a remarkable tool. It's my life's work. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And none of the things that I focused on here are particularly focused on signs. For anyone listening who's like, wait a minute, this is astrology. I've talked almost zero. I've talked a very small amount about signs. I've thought a very small about signs because astrology does not primarily rely on signs. And I think that's really like zodiac signs I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that most people are surprised by that. But, back to your like life path question, I think just finding ways of living that are honest and kind, where you experience some happiness and you share happiness with others. That's the purpose of life one way or another, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in different degrees and different styles, but that's really what life is for animals. I mean, us animals, my cat, my dog, like, that's the thing. It's kind of the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So finding out how you can do that in a way that feels honest to you.
Yes, that's it. And you can use astrology as a tool for investigating that. And you can use all manner of woo, and you can use psychology. There's so many ways that you can explore that. But ultimately, it's an emotional practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's the practice of being honest with yourself of like, the reason why you just grab your phone to scroll is because you started to feel sad about some fucking random thing, because you're bored, because we like want to change how we feel all the time. And we live in this, do you know who Patti Smith is?
I don't think so.
She's an amazing musician. Anyways, she said something to the effect of how she was really sad because we don't have empty time anymore. We don't have empty space anymore. And as an artist, she was like, it was when I was doing nothing and there was nothing happening around me or in my head that I had the greatest inspiration.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck, that's true. I'm just constantly like scrolling. There's noise, 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 noise. And it stops you from having those bolts, right? Having that inspiration. We have in some ways more time. So many things are automated, but we have less space. And that's
true.
Not good, It's
right. We're not leaving room for anything unpredictable. We're not leaving room for anything that we haven't come up with or that somebody else hasn't already come up with.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so many people are pointed towards woo in all manners, right? Like alternative spirituality stuff. But if you don't carve out space and sit in the discomfort, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
That's just how that works.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your insight. And I know that my listeners have really enjoyed listening to you too. So where can we find you if we want to hear more?
Sure. If you want to hear more, you can listen to Ghost of a Podcast out twice a week. My midweek episode, I give readings, full in-depth readings. And then my Sunday episode is a horoscope for the week ahead.
Yay. And I can attest to that. It's so amazing. It's my favorite. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And thanks for talking with me.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.